If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. You are listening to the JonBenet Ramsey series. This is episode 9, The Forgotten Suspect. And we are going to take a look at someone here who was mentioned early on online, I believe 2006 or so. Most of this has been scrubbed from the internet and very difficult to find now, but this is Mindshock, where we examine every avenue, every theory. No one is alleging anybody is innocent or guilty in any way. This is simply the examination of available evidence and theories. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. Or you can just go to youtube.com/Mindshock. Like and share this podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get a priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast, or requests. You can also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. Alright, so this post, The Forgotten Suspect, by Under the Radar, August 2006. Part 1. In the summer of 2001, the JonBenet Ramsey 5-year anniversary was quickly approaching. An arrest had not been made, and at that time I was convinced that Patsy Ramsey had committed this crime. I had based my opinion on basically what I saw in the media and the scant few pieces of evidence that I saw on TV. I just figured the ransom note was written in the home, JonBenet was killed in the home, and the body was found in the home. Patsy Ramsey did not look too believable on TV. It was Christmas night. Who kills on Christmas night is what I asked myself. Shouldn't they be home with their family? I could not believe that an arrest had not been made yet. That was when I decided to set out to see if I just may be wrong about Patsy Ramsey. And I quickly found out that I was dead wrong about Patsy Ramsey. I can only describe it as heaven sent. God, my interest in solving crimes, and the internet is how I was able to solve this crime. One day, when I was at work, on lunch of course, I decided to pull up the ransom note on the internet and see if I could see anything in it that would not only eliminate Patsy Ramsey, but women altogether. I was looking for a man word if there is any such thing. I just knew that I would know it when I saw it. I put myself in Patsy Ramsey's shoes and pretended that I was her writing this note after allegedly killing my daughter. I decided to pull the top of the screen down towards the bottom of the screen in order to only expose about one line at a time of the ransom note. I wanted to concentrate one line at a time. It took me literally 5 minutes to see what I was looking for and more. And here's the line, and I have to admit that it was a minor clue at the time. Make sure you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. I found the use of the word bring in that sentence unusual. Because if I were Patsy Ramsey and I was writing the note, I surely would have used the word take instead of bring. For at least 2 reasons. The first being you would want to portray yourself as being on the outside looking in on the crime. If you give away your position by saying bring and letting everyone know that you'll be waiting for John when he gets to the bank, it could make it easier for you to get caught. Secondly, the ransom note is written in the house, meaning the attaché is most likely in the house somewhere close by. Even more reason to use the word take instead of bring. This author is comfortable using the word bring. I thought to myself, maybe a banker wrote the note since he will already be there. And that is when I decided to read the ransom notes again, as if I were a disgruntled banker friend of John's writing them. And that is when I began to see many clues that pointed directly to a banker friend being involved. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. I guess they don't like $50 bills? The author of the ransom note begins the most important part of the ransom note, which is the body, by saying you will withdraw $118,000 from your account. Classic banker lingo. I mean, that's actually an interesting point. Withdraw instead of get 118, or withdraw, specifically withdraw. That's interesting. That is interesting. Classic banker lingo. He goes on to use the words bills twice. Says remaining. Notice that the author uses a decimal point when writing the amount of $118,000 and 0 cents. If one is thinking in terms of hundreds of thousands of dollars, why use a decimal which represents cents? That's another interesting point. A banker uses decimal points in his everyday life, and why does the money have to come from John's account? Well, that's another interesting point. Yeah, who cares where they get the money? This statement tells us something about the author, and that is he has an interest in John's bank account. Why can't John get the money from a safe or from a friend? Why does it specifically have to come from John's account? Is it because he wanted to be in control of the transaction to ensure that John was following the instructions to a T? That's what I thought. More evidence of a banker friend. And then these lines. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money. The author now tells us something else about himself. He now tells us that he will know if John gets the money early, because he says if we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier pickup of your daughter. So that's an important clue, because again, he says that if he monitors John getting the money early, he will know when to call him early. He doesn't want to call John too soon before John gets the money and have to keep calling him back. He wants it to run smoothly. I also figured at the time that the only person who could truly monitor the transaction and know if John really got the money early would have to be inside the bank in the middle of the transaction. Because even if you are the killer and you know what bank John will go to and go into the bank, you won't necessarily know if John actually got the money. He may have run into some difficulties in obtaining it at the time. That's curious. I haven't actually really heard anybody dissect this part of the note before. It is curious. Then there were other words in the ransom note that showed me that this was personal. The purpose of this note being written was more than just about a ransom. The money was definitely the secondary motive at the least. And the author tells something else about himself in this following paragraph. He tells us that he is angry at John about something. Because in the beginning of the ransom note, the author begins calm, cool, and collected. He began by calling John Ramsey Mr. Ramsey, trying to give the impression that they were not familiar with each other personally. Then by the end of the note, after all of his anger and emotions have come out, he is so angry that it makes him come out of character and show everyone, especially John, that yes, this is personal. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good southern common sense of yours. It is up to you now, John. So at this point, I was sure a banker friend had written the ransom note and most likely killed JonBenet. I just needed to find out his name. I had theorized at the time that John Ramsey, the guy with the multi-billion-dollar business who was all in the local newspapers, most likely had a banker who was also probably close to him in Boulder. Most likely a bank manager at his local bank. I thought that he wanted John to come through him. That is why he told him to get the money from his account. Another question the banker theory could logically answer was how could the author of the ransom note know about the Christmas bonus amount that John Ramsey received that year of $118,000 that was the same amount on the ransom note? A banker friend could easily find out. Also, again, if John was bragging or there was a pay stub left around the house, obviously it's possible there's a circle of individuals that could have known, but it's curious either way. And A banker friend could easily find out. And for nearly 5 years, that was my theory, until I read John and Patsy Ramsey's book, The Death of Innocence. I read the book last November 2005, and when I did, it finally showed me the name of the banker friend I was looking for. But it was not a local banker in Boulder, Colorado at all. He was actually John Ramsey's financial manager / friend from Atlanta, Georgia. One would think that if I wanted to determine who committed this crime, John and Patsy's books should have been the first thing that I read. But it was one of the last, 5 years later. I can't say why it happened that way, but I can say I'm glad that it did, because it gave me 5 years to learn the case and all of the evidence and clues. And the Ramsey book was just a nail in the coffin for me as to who committed this crime. This is the way I determined the banker's name, by reading John and Patsy Ramsey's book, The Death of Innocence. The following are direct quotes from the book, The Death of Innocence. John is describing what he did to arrange getting the ransom note shortly after reading the ransom note. I'm assuming getting the ransom money shortly after reading the ransom note. I call my banker friend Rod Westland in Atlanta to arrange the ransom money and discover that he has left for his parents' home in Tupelo, Mississippi. I get through to his assistant at Atlanta's Merrill Lynch office. I'm thankful that today is a work day. I quickly explain what has happened, and she says she'll get in touch with Rod right away. Rod Westmoreland. The phone rings, everyone freezes as I slowly pick up the receiver. Hello, I answer tentatively. John, this is Rod. We've arranged for you to have a credit line of $118,000 on your Visa card. You can go to a local bank and get the money as a cash advance. John Fernie has been in contact with the president of a local bank, a personal friend of his, and is working to get the ransom money ready. John Fernie goes to the bank with my credit card to get the cash. Those lines blew up my theory of the killer being a local banker in Boulder, Colorado, because he never arranged to get the money by just going to his local bank and walking into the doors to meet his local bank manager, who also happened to be his friend. He had to call another banker friend of his in Atlanta, Georgia, who just happened to not be home on Christmas Day, to arrange to get the money. Is that kind of weird, though? That seems kind of weird. Wouldn't you just go to your local branch to get it as fast as possible? I don't know. So while that information did blow up one part of my theory, it actually helped me to see what was really going on here. And it showed me the name of the specific banker friend that was involved in the transaction that day, and that was Rod Westmoreland. Now, if Rod Westmoreland is our killer who most likely wrote the ransom note, let's try to determine what we know about Rod Westmoreland and his actions before, during, and after the crime. As stated earlier, one of the first things I found out about him is that he is not at home in Atlanta, Georgia on the day of the crime. Another thing we learn, which is very important, is that he is one of the 2 known participants in the plot or exchange of the money and JonBenet as laid out in the ransom note. There are only 3 known participants in the plot itself if you follow the ransom note. For instance, in the ransom note, the kidnapper wanted John Ramsey to get money from his account and give it to the kidnapper in exchange for his daughter. Now, the participants in that plot is John Ramsey, the person John had to go through to get the money, who we know now is Rod Westmoreland, and the kidnapper, in parentheses S, in exchange for his daughter. One of the first rules of investigations is to follow the money trail. Even if Rod Westmoreland is innocent of this very public crime, I believe that his name should be more publicly known, just for history's sake, so the public gets the story straight on what actually occurred that day. I have heard just about everyone else's name in this case named as a possible suspect, even Santa Claus, for goodness sake. Then why am I the only person talking about Rod Westmoreland and the role that he played in this crime? If this were a movie, he would have played a major supporting role in it before, during, and after the crime. I'm not sure about that. This is just hours after the crime as Rod Westmoreland comes to town from wherever he was at. So, back to the book here. Rod Westmoreland, my good friend who had helped me raise the ransom money, Arrived from Atlanta. I was grateful to see him. Wait a second, wasn't he in Tupelo? Over the 20 years I had known Rod, he had always come to my aid when I needed him. For him to leave Atlanta during the Christmas season, during a busy time of the year for him professionally, was no small sacrifice. He started questioning the police, hammering away on what I wanted to know. We just learned something else about Rod Westmoreland from John Ramsey himself. That Rod Westmoreland being there in Boulder, Colorado was no small sacrifice. So Rod apparently had gone above and beyond to be there on scene just hours after the crime in Boulder, and notice the very first thing he apparently does when walking through the door, questioning the police, hammering away on what I wanted to know. Rod asked the police, "How many of you are on the case right now?" Rod pressed. "Well, there's 8 of us." Rod pressed further. "Well, where are the rest of them?" "Actually, a couple are on vacation and a few are sick," the detective answered. Let me put it another way. Rod bore down. "Exactly how many are working on solving this problem right now?" "You're telling me that you only have 2 or 3 at most working on the case." Rod glared at the man. "Something like that," the detective admitted. "The FBI," Rod asked again. "We only have to call them," the detective explained. Personally, I find that behavior odd by Rod Westmoreland. A person who had just supposedly arrived on the crime scene from out of town would naturally need some time to soak up all these strange clues, and would also need time to determine if the police were doing a good or bad job of investigating. Police can investigate in funny ways sometimes. There could be 1 officer in the room, but 30 behind the scenes investigating. So common sense would say take some time to see what the clues are and how the police are reacting to them, especially since all of the initial clues in the beginning indicated that someone in the house committed this crime, namely one of his friends in the Ramsey family. Note written in the home, JonBenet killed in the home, body found in the home, so what's his rush to judgment for? And in all of this, I believe we learned something else about Rod Westmoreland. Through my research over the years, I learned that Rod Westmoreland actually has a wife. I did learn her name, but I won't reveal it now. John Ramsey's book never mentions her arriving on the crime scene with Rod, so I believe we learned that he showed up on the crime scene alone without his wife. Now that I determined who I believed to be the killer, I wanted to keep learning more about the case and as much about this individual as I could. And the best way was my original way, the internet. I will now try to show you in as many ways as possible how the clues in this case continue to point to one person, and he is Rod Westmoreland, John Ramsey's financial manager friend, and how much more sense my theory makes than any other theory that has ever been made public. I believe that the most important piece of evidence found at the crime scene was the ransom note, not the DNA, because the DNA could be explained away if the killer was close to the family and JonBenet. The DNA could have gotten there innocently. There is nothing innocent about the ransom note. And again, the note is not just about a ransom, it wants to tell a story also, to let John know that this is personal, and it comes from within the killer. Just as the DNA takes us into the killer's cells and molecules, the ransom note takes us into the killer's heart and mind. One of the best things that I like about the ransom note is that it can help an amateur detective like myself eliminate whole pools of possible suspects. For instance, we may not all agree on who the possible suspect in this case is, but there is one thing that I'm sure is unanimous, and that whoever killed JonBenet Ramsey had to come from one of the following pools of suspects: the immediate family, the extended family, including in-laws, business associates, whether at home or at work and anywhere in between, friends, old and new, close and not so close, or strangers, crime of opportunity. So these are the 5 pools that are listed here. The Boulder DA claims that John Mark Carr sexually assaulted and killed JonBenet Ramsey. Since the author of the ransom note wants to tell a story, I will use the ransom note as a guide and compare the Boulder DA's suspect, John Carr, against my suspect, Rod Westmoreland. And I will let the public judge for themselves whose theory makes more sense and whose suspect would make the strongest suspect. John Mark Carr. would be considered a stranger. He does not know the family personally, and the Ramseys do not know John Carr personally. Although this is actually disputed as well. Rod Westland would be considered a friend or business associate. Rod Westland does know the Ramseys intimately and the house intimately. So he is a friend first and a business associate secondly, because he does business with John by being his financial manager. Using one of the most important pieces of evidence left at the crime scene, the ransom note, I will eliminate the very first pool of suspects, and that will be strangers or crimes of opportunity. I have already made my feelings known as to how intimately this killer had to have known this family and their house. As I stated before, the ransom note tells us that this was personal, no matter how much the author attempted to hide it in the beginning of the ransom note. This killer was no stranger, thus eliminating strangers or crimes of opportunity. That leaves immediate family, extended family, business associate, friend. Now I'm going to eliminate the immediate family and extended family. If, for the sake of this argument, and that the ransom note is real, and the author really wanted that money, then this is how we eliminate the immediate family. It wouldn't be physically possible for anyone in the home that day, the immediate family, to pull this crime off and get away with it. They can't be in two places at one time. They can't be at home with the police, because the first thing they did was to call the police, and then at the same time out somewhere else at the bank watching. So that eliminates the immediate family. Unless, of course, the immediate family was working with other parties. And, of course, this is all, again, presupposing that the ransom is real, which the author here is admitting that, supposing it's real, all of this is at play. But even then, the immediate family can be in cahoots with other individuals, possibly. And the last and final pools of possible suspect that I want to eliminate was the extended family. And the way that I was able to eliminate them was the same way I was able to eliminate everyone else on the planet, beside just one person, as being the author of the ransom note at the time that it was written. And I like to call it the kidnapper mistake, or Rod Westmoreland's big omission. The author of the ransom notes wants to give the impression that he already knows where John does his banking and will be waiting for John Ramsey to arrive so he can monitor John getting the money. So the kidnappers will know when to call John early. One problem with that plot is that the author of the note never feels the need to tell John Ramsey in the ransom note what specific bank branch to go to in order to monitor John getting the money early. And to add to that confusion, as we learned from the previous excerpts from the Ramsey's book, the money was set up on John's Visa card as a cash advance. And that's another issue, isn't that, I mean, what's the percentage on the cash advance? Is that really the smartest financial way to do this deal? It's kind of weird. So John could have picked the money up at the bank he wanted to, including the one closest to his house. Furthermore, the person who eventually went to pick up the ransom money was John Fernie, not John Ramsey, as Fernie took Ramsey's Visa card to the bank to get the money. And that's another security issue. Like, do banks just give $118,000 to anybody who shows up with the guy's Visa card? This author seemed more concerned about John's account than he was of John's bank. With all of those known facts, the only person on the planet who could have said on December 25th, at the time the ransom note was written, that they, quote, will know when John gets the money early, end quote, without ever telling John Ramsey in the ransom notes which specific branch to go to, is Rod Westmoreland. Because he wouldn't have to tell John which bank to go to, because he knows he will learn by phone later. John Ramsey probably didn't even know what bank he would be picking the money up at the time he first read the ransom note, because as we learned from the Ramsey book, the money was eventually picked up at a friend of John Ramsey's bank, who just happened to be at the house at the time, not at John Ramsey's usual bank. Another important thing that Rod Westmoreland would learn from the phone calls from John Ramsey is if John Ramsey is following the instructions in the ransom note. The ransom note tells John not to notify anyone of his situation, including bank authorities. So if John Ramsey calls his friend of 20 years, who also happens to be his financial manager, and never mentions to him that JonBenet has been kidnapped, then he can assume that he, John, may not have called the police either. The only two pools of suspects that I was possibly not able to conclusively eliminate were friends and business associates. And there are things in the ransom note that says it could be a business associate. Lines such as, quote, "We respect your business," end quote. Rod Westland is not only a close friend, but he is also considered a business associate because he is on John Ramsey's payroll as John's financial manager. I have now shown you, by process of elimination, how you are able to eliminate pools of possible suspects by using the ransom as your guide. I also showed you how you can see in the ransom note some of the unconscious mistakes the author made, including the biggest mistake, which exposed Rod Westland as being the only person on the planet as being the author of the note at the time that it was written. I will now show you more clues from the ransom note that points to Rod Westland as being the author of the note. The line came towards the end of the notes, the time in the notes when the author began getting emotional and was trying to show John that this is personal. Those lines were, quote, "You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult," end quote. With this statement, the author of the ransom note tells us a couple of things about himself. He tells us that he knows John well enough to know that John Ramsey is not only rich, but John's wealth has somehow gone to his head, and that John may consider himself some kind of fat cat. And also, more importantly, it tells us that the author of the note, the killer of JonBenet Ramsey, considers himself a fat cat somewhere near the level of John Ramsey. Because if he tells John Ramsey that John is not the only fat cat around, that must mean that the writer also considers himself somewhat of a fat cat. My suspicion about those lines and the connection between Rod Westland and the use of the word fat cat in the ransom notes were validated when I came across the actual transcripts of the taped interview that John Ramsey gave to the police, and here is what they revealed. So this was from June 25th, 26th, 27th, 1998. Taped interrogation interview of John Ramsey by Lou Smith and Michael Caine in Colorado. Michael Caine, these are the phrases in the ransom note here that seem to have some kind of Hollywood connection. What do you think about that? John Ramsey says, "There are the phrases that came out later, 'You must grow a brain,' and 'other fat cats here,' or something like that." Michael Caine asks, "You're not the only fat cat around." John Ramsey says, "Well, grow a brain, fat cats, we've heard them before." John recalled a reception after JonBenet's funeral in Atlanta by his wealthy stockbroker friend, Rod Westland. John Ramsey says, "My friends were around me, consoling me and trying to give me advice. And to be part of that group, it's the Atlanta Fat Cats." We now learn from John Ramsey that Rod Westland considers himself a fat cat, an Atlanta fat cat. Huh. So John Ramsey's insinuating here that there's a group of Atlanta fat cats, and that all these guys consider themselves fat cats. Amongst them, John Ramsey and Todd Westmoreland. That's pretty curious. That's pretty curious. The author of the note also says, "Use that good Southern common sense of yours." I found this comment to be unusual considering the situation. This writer is in Colorado, in another person's home, committing a crime, and during all of this, he is in the presence of mind to be thinking of the South. The writer actually is paying a compliment to the South by saying that good Southern common sense. John Ramsey lived in the South, but he is not a Southerner. He was originally from Michigan. So why would this author knowingly want to take the time to pay a compliment to the South? I believe it is because the author is from the South. Atlanta, to be exact. An Atlanta fat cat. That is about one of the clues that points to both John Carr and Rod Westmoreland in this case. And that is, they both have lived in Atlanta at one time or another. And I don't know if this particular author knows this, and I don't know if this rumor was ever substantiated, but did John Mark Carr's wife give birth at the same Atlanta hospital as Patsy Ramsey was giving birth? And yeah, that was, I don't know if that was just a rumor, if that was actually substantiated, as well as other weird, bizarre connections between John Mark Carr and John Ramsey. But regardless, the fact that the author of the ransom note wants to pay a compliment to the South and that Rod Westmoreland is from the South is just more evidence, in my opinion, of Rod Westmoreland's involvement. At this point, in my opinion, the only difference between Rod Westmoreland's guilt or innocence is just a matter of hours. Did he really arrive in Boulder at the time that he says he did, or was he already in Boulder prior to when he says he was committing the crime? Because all of the other clues seem to point to him as being the strongest suspect. Once I finally determined Rod Westmoreland's name, which would have been in November of 2005, I immediately sent Professor Michael Tracy a series of emails detailing my concerns about Rod Westmoreland. And he did respond to all of them, but didn't say much. But what he did say was that he would forward the information to Detective Lou Smith, and I thanked him for it. Unknown to me at the time, but known to me now, is that Professor Tracy had other ideas of his own as to who the killer was, because he had already been talking with John Carr for the past 3 years. So he had plans, and he had a book to coincide with the arrest. And at this point, I really doubt if he ever forwarded my information to the police. Which is why I also sent numerous emails to the Boulder DA expressing my concerns about Rod Westmoreland. They only responded with a general email that they send everyone and never asked me one question about my theory. Part 2. I will now take my theory as Rod Westmoreland being the killer of JonBenet Ramsey a step further. But before I do, I must say I am 100% sure that Rod Westmoreland committed this crime. I know this because of all the information that I've learned over the years about the case, and I have tried to show everyone else as best as I could in the first part of my theory, so I don't want the second part of my theory in any way to take away from the validity of the first part of my theory. And that is, Rod Westmoreland is the killer. The second part of my theory is based on a very strong gut feeling that I have and things that this person has said. And here is the second part of my theory. Once I finally determined Rod Westmoreland's name, I thought to myself, if Rod Westmoreland really killed JonBenet, and if he is still alive, he is out there somewhere for his bird. And although he was so close to the crime before, during, and after it, after almost 10 years, no one has ever talked about him as a possible suspect. He is rarely even brought up in a casual way when people discuss the case. He is literally the forgotten suspect. So I thought he must be feeling really confident about himself that he was able to outsmart everyone for this long and avoid all public scrutiny. He would also want to know if somebody out there had figured him out and may have been talking about him as a possible suspect in the case. Since he was a financial manager, computers was his life. So he would most likely be on a computer, in particular JonBenet Ramsey forums. Professor Michael Tracy isn't the only person who believes they have talked to the killer of JonBenet Ramsey online. I also believe that I have communicated with Rod Westmoreland online while he was trying to see if anyone was talking about him as a suspect, and I will be using these postings from who I believe to be Rod Westmoreland himself and the killer of JonBenet Ramsey to help me to show the possible motives for this crime and try to help explain the why in this crime. There is some information that this poster has revealed online that, if true, it is information that only the killer could know. It has some very revealing information that has never been made public. You will also see how this poster threatened to find out where I live and kick the expletive out of me and make me hold his target. Simply because I said that I believed Rod Westmoreland killed JonBenet and that I believed this poster was Rod Westmoreland. And that I should tell this to the Boulder DA, and you will see where the poster pretty much dares the Boulder DA to try and come after him. The plot is really thickening here. As I stated before, my sole purpose for going into the JonBenet Ramsey forums was to find Rod Westland and to help confirm all of my beliefs about him in this case. So everything I said inside of the forums was well thought out. Sometimes I would take a whole day to respond just to be sure that I said the right things. And everything this poster said was made from pure emotions. Even my screen name had a purpose, Under the Radar, and the very first discussion thread I began in the forum was titled, He's Been Under the Radar for Almost 10 Years. I knew that if he were out there, that title would get his attention before it would get anyone else's. So my plan of attack was to get his attention, then once I found someone who could possibly be him, begin by treating them nicely and at the same time not giving out too much information about my suspect, just dropping little hints here and there. I did not reveal Rod Westmoreland's name at first. This poster was actually the first person to name Rod Westmoreland by name in the forum. Once I determined that this poster could very well be him, I wanted to try and get him angry, and the way I would get him angry is by talking as bad as I could about Rod Westmoreland, just pretty much trashing him. And see how personally this poster would take that. And once I saw that he failed that test also, I wanted to see if he would actually cross the line and threaten me with bodily harm just by accusing him of being Rod Westmoreland and saying that I predicted he would be online trying to see who may be talking about him as a suspect, and that I should tell the Boulder DA this information. Now that I have set the context of the posting between myself and who I believe to be Rod Westmoreland, I will now show you some examples of the postings and some of the eerie things this person says in the forum. And I know that you may have your doubts about this poster really being Rod Westmoreland. I don't blame you, because I would have my doubts also. So to deal with that huge obstacle that I have in front of me, I will jump right to the chase. I will show you a posting that this poster made before I even began to post in the forum that shows you some possible information that only the killer could know. I hope this can get your attention. Remember, my screen name is Under the Radar, and this poster's screen name is Autumn. Autumn claims to be a woman. This is a very public discussion forum. Question. When the author of the ransom says, your daughter will be beheaded, did you ever stop to think to yourself, by what means is this person thinking about beheading her? Me neither. That is, until I read a posting by Autumn, a posting that again he posted before I arrived in the forum or just after I arrived there. Back when he was free to talk, and talk is what he did, and here's an excerpt from the post. The discussion was titled, What Would You Ask the Parents? And here's a very, very interesting question that Autumn would love to ask John and Patsy Ramsey. Autumn wrote, I would ask if either of them, the parents, can account for the evidence that was removed from the house with the body of their daughter, especially the wire that was found in the basement near the body. If they knew anything about a cutter type of garrote that is made with wire and could be used to decapitate a small child, how was JonBenet cleaned up after a bedwetting? Autumn just says something about asking the parents to account for evidence that was removed from the house with their daughter's body, especially a cutter or type of garrote. After all of my years of research, this is the first time that I have ever heard of a second possible murder weapon being collected from the crime scene. If there were another murder weapon, in particularly another garrote collected from the crime scene, and it had been made public by the Boulder DA, I'm sure that I would have been all over the news by now. But the only weapon collected from the crime scene that has ever been made public to this point is the garrote with the rope. But Autumn is saying there was a cutter also removed from the crime scene. For those of you who do not know what a cutter is, I can't blame you for that because I didn't know what it was either. But I looked it up on the internet, and a cutter is a type of garrote, but it is more deadlier and lethal type of garrote, whereas the normal garrote is made from ropes, like the one that was used on JonBenet Ramsey, and is mostly meant to strangle and cut off the airways. A cutter is made of a thin metal, like a guitar string or piano string, and it actually cuts into the skin and can actually decapitate a small child, just like Autumn said. And that would explain the means as to how the author planned on decapitating JonBenet. With a cutter, I took the extra step to find the actual evidence list that was released to the public by the Boulder DA. And on that list, there are two pieces of evidence that refer to some wire that were collected. wire near body, 7 kky, wire tied in knot, 5 bah. How does Autumn assume from those two pieces of evidence that it was a cutter is beyond me. And something else that is very curious about this comment is this. When he asked the question to the Ramseys, and he says that he wants them to account for the wire that was removed from the house with their daughter's body, what does he mean by account for it? The wire has been accounted for already. You see it right there on the evidence list. Does he really mean why hasn't the wire been accounted for as a weapon publicly yet? It seems like it is something that he's proud of and is somewhat upset that hasn't been made public yet, just a wire. This is just a strong gut feeling, but someone should ask the Boulder DA if a cutter was found at the crime scene and what they say. I believe they may have more information that has never been released publicly for reasons such as this, in case the real killer comes along and says something that has never been said publicly. Here is a copy of the actual text by Autumn, including all the questions that he would like to ask the Ramseys. April 15, 2006. So what are the questions you would ask the parents, which is the title of this particular thread? What questions would you ask them to remove any doubt that you had that they might know more about this than they say they do? 1, I would ask for guest lists of the parties they attended in the 3 months preceding the crime. 2, I would ask for the mailing lists of their 95 and 96 Christmas newsletters. 3, if they believe the article that appeared in the newspaper less than 6 days before JonBenet's murder about Access reaching the $1 billion mark had something to do with this crime. 4, how often did they take JonBenet to the park in their neighborhood? This question pertains to a janitor of the park that was accused of peeping in on people in the women's bathroom. That's the first I've heard of that. 5, if JonBenet was allowed to go to the restroom by herself in public. 6, if they ever saw signs of inappropriate conduct regarding JonBenet. 7, what forms of discipline they used regarding their children. 8, on average in a week, how often the children were in need of discipline. 9, I would ask both of the Ramseys if anyone had shown any flirtation towards either of them in the preceding 6 months before the murder, or if either of them noticed the other being flirted with, and how those advances were rebuffed. 10, I would ask them for a list of people that had access to their house that smoked. 11, if anyone that normally would attend parties given by or for the Ramseys had been accidentally or purposely left off any guest list or the mailing lists due to failing friendship, person no longer employed by the Ramseys, etc. That's a pretty good question. 12, how were people invited to the Ramseys social circle, and was anyone trying really hard to get in? Also a pretty good question. 13, how were people invited to specific parties or gatherings given by the Ramseys, and who did the inviting? 12, if they had a phone jack in the basement or outside the house, since the December 23rd 911 hang-up call could have been placed to establish police response time to the house. 13, if they had ever heard of a garrote before this crime, and if so, did they know that it is used in some countries as an execution device, and is also depicted in the U.S. Navy's World War II hand-to-hand combat manual for naval aviators, the famous V5 manual, and the U.S. Army's Field Manual 21-150, marked December 1971. 14, if thinking about the above answer brings anyone to mind that may have knowledge for using or making the device. 15, if either of them knew that the garrote is also studied in regard to martial arts, and if knowing this information brings up memories of anything or anyone concerning martial arts or personal self-defense. 16, I would ask if either of them can account for the evidence that was removed from the house with the body of their daughter, especially the wire that was found in the basement near the body. 17, if they knew anything about a cutter type of garrote that is made with wire and could be used to decapitate a small child. 18, how was JonBenet cleaned up after a bedwetting episode? 19, I would ask Mrs. Ramsey why she didn't make JonBenet go to the bathroom before tucking her in on Christmas night, even though she knew they were going to be rushed for time, and logic says she wouldn't have wanted to take extra time in the morning to clean up a bedwetting episode. April 15, 2006. 20, when you got the letter from Santa Bill about his illness, did you respond to it? And if so, how did you respond? 21, did you give out Christmas presents to your maid, your mailman, Santa Bill, etc.? And if so, what were those gifts? 22, did you pay Santa Bill for attending your party even though he had said he would do it for free? 23, who received a men's scarf from you as a present? 24, have all those scars been accounted for? 25, how intimately do you think this killer knew your family before the crime? 26, how long and how often before this crime do you believe the killer was in your house? 27, did you ever have the feeling that something seemed out of place in the house, or you couldn't find something after you were sure you had left it in a specific place? 28, did your children ever complain about their things missing or ending up in weird places? These questions are weird. It's almost getting like to a paranormal vibe here. 29, I would ask them to make a list of every person or company that has delivered to or worked on their houses. 30, finally, I would ask them if they could go back to that morning when the note was found. Knowing how this case has turned out so far, what, if anything, would they do differently? Wow, that's also a kind of a creepy question as well. Is he trying to insinuate here that they shouldn't call the police? Okay. Back to Under the Radar's post here. Now I will talk about this killer's motives. Why would Rod Westland, John Ramsey's close friend of 20 years, a wealthy guy himself, want to commit a crime like this against John Ramsey and kill JonBenet? Since I was not there that day and have never met either John Ramsey or Rod Westland, I can only theorize as to all of the reasons this crime occurred. And here's what I theorized happened, and I will use postings from Autumn to try and confirm my theory. The very first motive for this crime begins with inside of the killer. This person is just a sick, diabolical, controlling, and manipulating type of person who is susceptible to committing a crime like this. Then from there, I believe the other motives are jealousy, greed, and anger. Because the ransom note tells us that. Someone was angry at John for something and wanted to get back at him and knock him off his pedestal. This killer wanted to take something away from John and be around to watch him suffer. Because even though the ransom note was directed at John, the killer killed JonBenet. Why didn't he just kill John? It's because he wanted to take something away from John, I believe, and John did indeed fall off his pedestal, just as this killer had planned. Listen to how Autumn/Rod Westmoreland describes the killer of JonBenet and how he committed this crime. This post April 13th, 2006, by Autumn. Personally, I see this killer as an organized offender who staged this crime scene to look like an unorganized offender committed it. I don't believe someone who was as comfortable in that house as the Ramseys would have missed the opportunity to leave clues in other places throughout the house. This killer was worried about being caught and kept his crime in an area that had numerous exits, except for the second floor, which he removed the child from, and the basement, which only had one. But leaving the ransom note with such a paltry amount for the owner of $1 billion company should have ensured him enough time to get out that window and escape before the Ramseys even expected to hear from them about the delivery of the ransom money. Of course, the Ramseys didn't wait. They tried to get help and called 911, which may explain why the butler door, closes door to the basement, I believe, was found open when a Ramsey family friend arrived, even though Mr. Ramsey had checked the door himself earlier and found it to be secure. It was also near this door in the yard that an unidentified aluminum bat containing carpet fibers from the basement was found. I'm just guessing here, but couldn't the small knob on an aluminum baseball bat be what cracked JonBenet's skull? We know there was no blood coming from a head wound, so you wouldn't find any on the bat, but carpet fibers from the bat say it was in the basement sometime prior to her death, and since the owner of that bat has never been identified, you have to wonder why it's there. Oh yeah, I do have one final question for you. Whose DNA is under JonBenet Ramsey's fingernails and in her panties? Unknown male DNA is what the lab report says. I know it makes me wonder who else was with JonBenet that night. Pretty interesting how the plot thickens when you look at the evidence instead of making up your mind based on other people's opinions. You all say you care about JonBenet. Well, when I say quit hurting her case and her parents and start praying that the investigation of her murder continues until her killer or killers are caught, and that it happens before he takes another innocent life. I really hope I gave all of you some more to think about other than what the media mainstream reports say. And just to be perfectly clear, I have no connection to the Ramseys. I came to my conclusions based on the evidence. Parents definitely don't need a stun gun to get control of their own abused 6-year-old child. And if this fantasy child abuse has been going on for any length of time like you say it was, then common sense tells you that the parents already knew they didn't need a stun gun to get JonBenet to do exactly what they wanted. So why use one as many times as it was used on her if it was just meant for staging? John Ramsey was raised in Michigan. He moved to Atlanta when he was around 30. Atlanta is where Rod Westland lives. When John Ramsey moved to Atlanta, he didn't have much money. He began his business by working out of his garage. I'm not sure of Rod Westland's status at the time when they first met. All I can say is that now he is a fat cat. So he was either broke like John, or he had more money than John. Either way, John eventually grew to have more wealth than Rod Westland, or at least became more famous. Rod Westland and John Ramsey were not lifelong friends, yet they were at a point in their lives where Rod Westland was in control of John Ramsey's billions of dollars. Also, just to clarify here, I'm not sure John Ramsey had billions of dollars. His company, Access Graphics, met a certain benchmark of $1 billion in sales. That doesn't mean that John Ramsey himself has billions of dollars liquid. He might, I don't know his, actually, let's look up his net worth at the time. Okay, so according to Wikipedia, his net worth was reported at $6.4 million, May 1st, 1996, prior to his daughter's murder. So this was before the $1 billion Access Graphics mark, so obviously he would have a lot more money. I don't know, that actually seems kind of low, though. Because he was named Entrepreneur of the Year by Boulder Chamber of Commerce. The company cleared over $1 billion, so that's supposedly net, not gross. And he's getting a $118,000 Christmas bonus. So how much money is he really? How much money does he really have on the books, off the books, with all these houses and boats or whatever he had? 6.4 seems kind of low, but still, you know, whatever. It seems like he did not have billions, though. Certainly not liquid. So he probably had maybe tens of millions at most. But anyway, continuing on here with Under the Radar's assessment. Illustrated by the fact that Rod Westland was the very first person John Ramsey called to arrange the ransom money after finding the ransom note. A friend of yours of 20 years, but not a lifelong friend, is now in control of your billions of dollar investments. That is a bad combination. This relationship is susceptible to jealousy and envy and greed. Also, counterpoint here, that depends, because what was Rod Westland's net worth? Because if he's managing all these different people's money, he might be doing quite well for himself as well. So Rod Westland actually has a listing in Forbes, Merrill Private Wealth Management, Atlanta, Georgia, and he's ranked 2021. He's ranked number 8, America's Top Wealth Advisors, number 1, Forbes Best in State Wealth Advisors 2021. Rod started his wealth management career in 1978. The entire tenure has been with Merrill Lynch in Atlanta. He is focused on servicing the complete needs of current and former private business owners, C-suite executives, and their families. He's also a member of Alexander Tharp Fund Board of Directors for Georgia Tech Athletic Association, past board member for Atlantic Chamber Players, member of the Board of Trustees for the High Museum of Art, where he is actively involved in the annual wine collection. Additionally, Rod belongs to the Capital City Club, Sea Island Country Club, and Atlanta Tastevin. Rod served in the Navy for 5 years as a Supply Corps officer after graduating from the Georgia Institute of Technology on an ROTC scholarship. Rod is married and has 2 children. Wow, is there a possible connection to John Ramsey and Rod Westland through the Navy? Huh. Anyway, he seems to have done, he's got a lot of industry recognition here. Chosen number 3 private wealth management team nationally by Barron's, top 50 private wealth management teams in 2020. Named to Barron's America's Top 100 Financial Advisors for the 14th consecutive year in 2020. Chosen number 1 advisor in Georgia by Barron's top 1,200 financial advisors for the 12th consecutive year in 2020. Top 10 advisor in the country by Forbes' top 250 wealth advisors for the 5th consecutive year in 2020. Number 1 Georgia best in state, 3rd consecutive year. Financial Times top 400 advisors in 2020 for 8th consecutive year. It is curious. Most of all these accolades are happening around 2004 and onward. So in 1996, it's curious that he obviously didn't have this level of recognition. And those into the dark conspiracies, if he's part of some kind of Illuminati web, was this ticket to the big show? Was he involved in some of these crazy parties or etc.? Again, I'm not alleging that he was or he wasn't. It's just, it's weird. It's definitely weird. I couldn't find a net worth on him. But it says here, minimum account size for business is $10 million. Typical size of household accounts, $10 to $75 million is what Rod Westland manages, according to MDJ Online. So, yeah, he's definitely got some big-time clients. Now, whether or not he was in the league of John Ramsey... But, again, we don't know any of the personal details of their relationship, so all of this is, of course, conjecture. Continuing on here, in these next postings from Autumn, you will now learn how much banking and financial management experience he has and how much knowledge he has of John's banking, things that Rod Westmoreland would know. The first part is my comments, then Autumn responding to my comments. June 23rd, 2006. Okay, we can go back and forth as far as the weight of the money being too heavy or not. The fact of the matter is that until we can actually have $1 million cash in front of us, which I hope happens soon, we truly can't tell either way. But I believe the weight is only half the problem. I have to refer back to another one of Autumn's previous postings when Autumn said, and Autumn seems to know a great deal of banking by the posting, that to get $1 million in cash in one day without calling the police for help would take a monumental effort. And a financial manager would know that, right, Autumn? Because, like Autumn said, just getting $118,000 in cash would take a lot of work. So I believe the problem was twofold. First, the amount of effort it would take to get $1 million in cash in such short notice, plus the weight of the money to be able to lug it around. Let me know what you think. Yes, $1 million cash withdrawal from the bank would take way too much time and could not be carried out without numerous questions being raised. Neither amount could be handled by just a teller, and either amount would make the bank manager highly suspicious, meaning that he would most likely make a call to his superiors or local authorities, who would notify the FBI of a possible crime in progress. Banks are educated in these types of situations and are taught to seek outside assistance when they become suspicious that a crime may be occurring. A financial manager would know that getting any large amount of cash from the bank quickly would cause alarm bells to go off at the bank and impede a speedy delivery of the money. That's probably why when he was contacted by John Ramsey about the money, Rod went to Visa and not a bank to secure the cash ransom demanded. Oh, that is curious. That actually does make sense. That is very, very interesting. Huh. Okay, Autumn's comments here. Although it is not impossible to withdraw $118,000 from a bank account in cash. Also, here in the comments, Autumn is writing 118,000.00 from a bank account in cash. It is a pain in the ass. First, you go into the bank and request the money. Then you have to fill out paperwork so the bank can inform the IRS, since anything over 10,000, again, .00, for the cents, going in or out of your account needs to be reported to them. Then the bank will usually try to get you to take a cashier's check for the withdrawal amount. Secondly, people with large incomes usually invest the money and don't leave it sitting in a bank that is only FDI insured for $100,000 per account. Also, .00. So asking for the extra 18,000.00 could have given the killer more time to get away if the plan was to destroy John's life by killing his daughter and not really about the ransom money. Thirdly, most banks will honor the withdrawal with their available cash on hand although they may need to write a cashier's check to be cashed at another one of their branches, if the amount of the withdrawal cannot be obtained at their branch. Some banks do require a notice of some sort and will make the money available by the next business day, which the ransom note seemed to give enough time for, since I believe the note was intended to be found on the 26th, which to me means the call from the kidnappers would have come on the 27th, one full banking day from when the note was found to when the call would come. This comment by Autumn helped to answer a question I had for a long time, and that was, what did the author mean when he told John, "I will call you tomorrow between 8 and 10 a.m.? When the author says tomorrow, did he mean the 26th or the 27th? Autumn just cleared that up. The author meant December 27th because, as Autumn just stated, John Ramsey would not have had enough time to get that amount of money from the bank that opens at 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. It would possibly take more time than that. And the author of the note also tells John to be well rested. Well, if he meant the 26th, there would be no time at all for any rest. But if he meant the 27th, then yes, he would have time to rest. Autumn's comments. Actually, the amount of the Christmas bonus was listed on all of John's 1996 pay stubs, starting in February, which I have heard were kept in John's study, so anyone with access to his study could have obtained that information. Under the radar's analysis here, it was listed on all of John's 96 pay stubs starting in November. How does Autumn supposedly know these specifics? Autumn's comments. I'm of the opinion that the note was rewritten at the Ramsey's house based on the fact that the paper and pen used were found at the scene. That's very possible. I have also wondered if the amount of the ransom could have been changed after the kidnapper saw one of John's pay stubs in his study. Maybe he figured it was only a bonus to John, so he would be willing to give it up without involving police. The same thing I figured, it was a bonus, so John would have no problem in giving it up. Here's a few more postings by Autumn that I found very interesting. June 20th, 2006. Devil Dog wrote, "My first post is in regards to this topic question, and Autumn, where did you go to boot? Semper Fi, Rod, Devil Dog, I went to boot at PI in SC. Are you from PI too, or Smiles? Are you a Hollywood Marine? The answer to your first question is yes. Do you know the case? Semper Fidelis." Here's the first time Autumn lets us know that he is former military. A Garrett is also a military weapon. Her death is so brutal, it seems like there is such a personal hatred towards her, or maybe just the killer's image of her. Her method of death doesn't seem to be directed at her father unless they were trying to behead her with the Garrett. But I really don't think killing her was in the original plan, since the murder weapon was made at the scene and not brought in with them. The ransom demand seems like it was meant for John, but then it looks like the perfect plan escalated into something the killer couldn't control. And from the content in the ransom note, we know the writer likes to seem like they are in complete control of their surroundings, even if those surroundings are in someone else's house. This killer is also sadistic and may get sexual or other pleasure by inflicting pain on others. It would have taken a pretty long time for the Garrett to kill JonBenet, and he could have stopped at any of the numerous twists along the way, but he didn't. He went to the very end until he couldn't twist anymore. The suffering that was inflicted on such a beautiful, innocent, tiny little girl by this monster haunts me. I just can't get it out of my head. Why would anyone? How could anyone? Why can't we find him? Where is he? Is he hurting someone else? Will JonBenet ever have justice? If the answer to the last question is no, then I hope that her killer or killers have already died horrible, painful deaths, much, much worse than this one. So Autumn is haunted by the death of JonBenet Ramsey. I really don't see Rod as the killer if this is who you are alluding to. Maybe he could have hired someone, but he has a really good alibi for the time of the crime. Could be someone connected to both John and Rod, though. Autumn is saying here in one of our earlier exchanges that he does not believe Rod to be the killer, but he does implicate Rod Westmoreland indirectly. by saying that he could have hired someone to do it. This is very important to remember because at this point, Autumn is saying himself that although Rod Westmoreland may not have directly killed JonBenet, rather he could have killed her indirectly. So he's not totally ruling out Rod's guilt at this point early on. John Ramsey hadn't made a political contribution since 1994, I believe, so maybe this has something to do with someone who felt betrayed by John because he didn't contribute to this person's cause, or it could just be a jealousy over the Ramseys' lifestyle. The ransom note is demanding and shows a lot of disdain for John. It also seems to depersonalize JonBenet like she is a possession instead of a person. So material possessions and power would seem to motivate this person. Maybe 118.000 would have been all that was needed to help this person gain something important to him, but he couldn't convince John to go along with it. I really don't think the BP went far enough back in John's past because I think the ransom note intentionally put the focus on Atlanta instead of possibly Michigan, where John grew up and attended college. It could also be someone from his military past, since garroting is in the December issue of a Navy training manual when I believe John was still enlisted. I see this as a game of Clue. So many suspects, weapons, and possible motives, all inexplicably tainted by an inexperienced police force. If we could only find a match for the DNA, which to me wouldn't be such a big deal if the same male DNA hadn't been collected from both her panties and under her fingernails, because I believe with all my heart that JonBenet fought hard for her life and got a piece of her killer before she died. This crime was like a game of Clue to the killer, and I agree this case is not about a pedophile such as John Carr. This case is about a diabolical killer who likes to make a game out of killing. Here's some more insight from Autumn about John Ramsey and Rod Westmoreland's relationship. May 10th, 2006. Yes, but I don't think the writer thought that John thought he was a big shot. John knew that Rod was a fat cat. He wouldn't have to tell him in a note. He didn't tell John Ramsey in the note that Rod was a fat cat. What he was doing in the note was trying to say something to John to try and stick it to him. And at the same time, he was reminding John of his own status as a fat cat, not realizing the importance of the comment. And here's Autumn's attempt to try and convince me that Rod Westmoreland has already been checked out. May 10, 2006, his whereabouts were checked along with all flight records. So unless he walked to Boulder, killed JonBenet, and then walked back to Atlanta to receive the call from John that morning, it wasn't him. Here's an important submission from Autumn. May 10, 2006, having to say you're not the only fat cat around implies that the writer considers himself a fat cat, although John doesn't consider him one. It also doesn't mention the Atlanta fat cats specifically. Rod is a recognized fat cat here in Atlanta, so there would be no reason for him to make that statement to John of all people. He has just acknowledged that he at least knows of Rod Westmoreland being recognized as a fat cat, and acknowledges that he also lives in Atlanta. But in one of the more heated exchanges when I began to accuse Autumn of being Rod Westmoreland, look at what he now says. I don't know where you got the idea that I lived in Atlanta or that I knew Rod or the Ramseys personally, but go ahead with your delusion if it makes you happy. July 14, 2006. Once I had determined that the person who I'd been communicating with for the past 4 months or so was most likely Rod Westmoreland, the person that I came searching for, I knew one of the best ways that I can confirm for sure if it was really him was to put it out for everyone in the forum to see for themselves. I was now going to accuse Autumn of being Rod Westmoreland and threaten to tell the Boulder DA about the connections between Autumn, who claims to be a woman, and Rod Westmoreland, and wait to see Autumn's reaction to that. If Autumn is truly not Westmoreland and is really a woman as she says, she wouldn't have anything to be worried about. But if it really is Westmoreland, then this response should be good, and here are some of those final exchanges between us. July 13, 2006. Under call the Boulder DA. Tell them you're a reporter and that you recently received information from a protected source that you choose not to name that Rod may have been involved in the murder. Some might say, well, if Autumn really is Westmoreland, then why did he just tell you? So that was the post there. Some might say, well, if Autumn really is Rod Westmoreland, then why did he just tell you to call the Boulder DA and tell them? To that I will say, well, yeah, he did tell me to go to the Boulder DA and tell them, but look at the false circumstance he set up for me to go to them. As a reporter, I say it was all a bluff to shut me up. Ask them if they can confirm or deny that he is a suspect. Ask them if he submitted handwriting and DNA samples and see if his alibi was checked out. Then tell them what you think. We don't get it, but maybe they will. All you can do is try. Obviously, it's very important to you to get the word out, but telling us isn't going to resolve anything for you. So make the call. You will feel better. Honestly, if I felt as strongly as you do about a suspect, I would have made the call a long time ago. You've got nothing to lose, right? All they can say is no, but at least you tried. Good luck. That was the post by Autumn. Wow, that is curious. Huh. Under the Radar said, thanks for the advice, Autumn. I will consider it, that's for sure. Now I have some advice for you, Autumn. Stop defending Rod Westmoreland, because every time I have something bad to say about him, you are the very first person who always comes to his defense. I am really starting to believe that you are Rod Westmoreland. Let's see what we know about Autumn. I know you say that you're a woman, but I would have to see you in person to believe that. You're from Atlanta, just like Rod Westmoreland. You have a background in banking or financial management that I can tell from your prior postings, just like Rod Westmoreland. You even claim to know Rod Westmoreland personally, and you seem to know some of the most intimate details about the Ramseys and the case, just like Ron Westmoreland would. And again, you will defend Rod Westmoreland with every ounce of blood, sweat, and tears in your body. Maybe I should take your advice a step further. If you aren't Rod Westmoreland, then you shouldn't have anything to worry about. But maybe I should call the Boulder DA and tell them that not only am I sure that Rod Westmoreland committed this crime, but I am sure that he is in the Topics.net forums posting as Autumn, trying to determine if anyone is chatting about him as a possible suspect, just as I suspected he would be doing. Maybe you should subpoena Autumn's postings and determine if it really is Rod Westmoreland, because Autumn has revealed some very incriminating evidence in prior postings that would help build their case. So don't stop posting now, Autumn. Just keep running your mouth and telling everyone in this forum just how informed you are about the case. Keep it flowing, Autumn. Please don't stop now, because then I will know for sure that you have just been spooked by my recommendation to the Boulder DA Rodney. And don't change screen names, because I will know who you are. You're just as quick to defend the middleman in the money transaction, Rod Westmoreland. Tell Rod Westmoreland when you see him that he is nothing, and I wish for the day when I come face to face with him, because I would spit in his face and dare him to do something about it. That coward. Tell him I said that he is nothing but a pathetic child killer, and I hope his cellmate finds out that he killed a little girl. And please don't stop posting on him, just keep on talking, because as far as I'm concerned, it's just more evidence of Rodney's guilt. You may not know this, but every time you post something, Autumn, it helps me. And if you now change your behavior, I will call you out on it and expose you for who you really are, Rod Westmoreland, just as I predicted. You think you're so smart, I think you are so predictable. So I will be telling the Boulder DA exactly where to find the child killer. How about turning your good friend Rod Westmoreland in, and maybe it will make you feel better, maybe it will help you get some sleep at night. My mind is clear, is yours. Do you have a lot of guilt on your mind? Have you ever heard that saying, one who solves crimes has a clear mind, one who commits crimes does not? Thus comes the sleepless nights, Autumn. Can you give us more insight about Rod Westmoreland himself? Did he ever serve in the military? How old is he? Does he have kids? Is he and John Ramsey still close friends? Anything else you can offer about Rod Westmoreland would be great, Autumn. Wow, here's another post by Autumn. I have security clearance so high that the Boulder DA can't even see my jacket. So you go right ahead and make yourself look even more ridiculous than everyone on here already thinks you are. Huh. Wow, that's an interesting challenge to Under the Radar. Let's see what Under the Radar thinks about this. Autumn now makes a direct challenge to the Boulder DA to even try to see his military jacket or files. If Autumn is a woman and not Rod Westmoreland, who is a man, then why would the investigation even need to get that far? I wonder if the FBI can see his military jacket. After all, he would have crossed state lines to commit this crime. He then sends me another subliminal threat of bodily harm. July 14, 2006. So, other posts here. Foxel Oxy wrote, would anyone like a side of fries with their plate of paranoia? No expletive. I thought it was a nice post. How anyone could take it any other way is beyond me, but leave it to under to feel persecuted by a show of friendly supportive advice. I did feel sorry for him. Now I just want to hold my target, LOL. He wants me to hold his target. That is a very diabolical thought. Just like the diabolical killer that killed JonBenet Ramsey. And I got the death threat that I was looking for just to shut me up, and I was now convinced that Autumn was Rod Westland in the forums listening to the chatter to see if anyone was talking about him as a suspect in the case, just as I predicted. And at that point, or shortly thereafter, I terminated all communications with Autumn, and Autumn quit posting for a while after those communications. Autumn has since returned to the forum and is now saying that he believes John Carr is guilty. I bet he does. It would actually be an about face for Autumn because early on, before Carr was arrested, his own comments state that this case is not about a pedophile because a pedophile would not leave a note. He stated that this killer was very familiar with the family, yet John Carr is a pedophile and does not know the family. Allegedly. So if Autumn is ever investigated and it turns out to be Rod Westmoreland, then that would be overwhelming proof of his guilt because he said some pretty incriminating statements in the forum, and it would again validate my theory. Part 3, as I stated in the beginning of Part 2, I don't want Part 3 to minimize or discount in any way Part 1 of my theory, and that is Rod Westmoreland committed this crime. Part 3 is similar to Part 2, a very strong gut feeling that I have, and I get that feeling because of eerie similarities between the notes left at both crime scenes. One of the profiles that I have of the killer of JonBenet Ramsey is that he does not only like to kill, but he enjoys killing. Is there a distinction there? He likes to make a game out of killing. He likes to see his handiwork on TV. But at the same time, he is a fat cat, and a fat cat has a lot to lose. So he wants to do everything he can not to get caught. He is controlling and manipulating and wants to control everything. With that said, it has now been almost 10 years since the JonBenet Ramsey murder. And if this killer really enjoys killing, as much as I believe he does, surely he would have killed again by now in a similar high-profile way. Well, I have a strong feeling that he has indeed killed again in a high-profile way. The still bizarre, unsolved mystery of the pizza bomber Brian Wells case. The reason I say that is because the notes left with Brian Wells are just too similar to the JonBenet notes to be excused. Although the letters were written almost 7 years apart and the JonBenet notes were purposely written sloppy, perhaps by someone wearing gloves, the Brian Wells notes were very neatly written, almost as if they were typed, like the killer writes the notes in the comfort of his own home. But they used the same letter formations, words, and phrases. They were both written with the same tone by the same controlling and manipulative type person. If the Boulder DA believes that John Carr's high school yearbook revealed similarities in the handwritings from the Ransom note, then someone needs to show them the instructional type notes that were left with Brian Wells. There are many more similarities between those two notes. Okay, for those that don't know about the Brian Wells case, I am not sure where Under the Radar is going with this, but this is quite a crazy case. Here's the breakdown. Brian Douglas Wells, born November 15th, 1956, died August 28th, 2003, was an American pizza delivery man who was murdered doing a complex plot involving a bank robbery, a scavenger hunt, and a homemade explosive device near his hometown of Erie, Pennsylvania. Following an attempt to rob a PNC bank and while surrounded by police, Wells was murdered when an explosive collar locked to his neck detonated. It is known as the collar bomb or pizza bomber case. The incident was shown live on television. Wells' involvement in the plot is a matter of controversy. Investigators concluded, and a federal prosecutor's indictment alleged Wells was a knowing participant in the bank robbery, but was told the bomb was fake and did not know his co-conspirators intended for him to die. Wells' family said he was not a willing participant in the incident. The multiple aspects of the crime meant the FBI led an investigative task force in conjunction with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives and the Pennsylvania State Police. It is the only crime of its kind. CNN described it as one of the most complicated and bizarre crimes in the annals of the FBI. The incident has gained extensive coverage in mass media, including the 2018 Netflix series Evil Genius. A federal grand jury indicted Marjorie Deal Armstrong and Kenneth Barnes on charges of bank robbery, conspiracy, and weapons charges. Fellow co-conspirator William Bill Rothstein had died, and his roommate Floyd Stockton was given immunity from prosecution so he could testify against Deal Armstrong. In 2008, U.S. District Judge Sean J. McLaughlin sentenced Barnes to 45 years in federal prison. 2 years later, Deal Armstrong was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Biography: Brian Wells was born in Warren, Pennsylvania to Rose and Harold Wells, the latter of whom was a Korean War veteran. In 1973, when Wells was a 16-year-old sophomore, he dropped out of Erie's East High School and went to work as a mechanic. Conspirators. At Kenneth Barnes' home, he, Marjorie Deal Armstrong, and William Rothstein discussed ways they could make money. Deal Armstrong suggested Barnes kill her father, Harold Deal, so that she would receive an inheritance. Barnes told her he was willing to do this for $200,000, equivalent to $281,368 in 2020. The collar bomb bank robbery plot was hatched to obtain enough money to pay Barnes to kill Deal Armstrong's father. How much was the inheritance going to be? Wow. In return for a reduced sentence, Barnes later told investigators Deal Armstrong was the mastermind of the crime and that she wanted the money to pay Barnes to kill her father, who she believed was wasting her inheritance. Wait a second. The inheritance was the guy's money, so he's not allowed to use it as he sees fit. He needs to be killed in order for her to get it. Interesting. Deal Armstrong, Barnes, and Rothstein seem to have issues with compulsive hoarding. Marjorie Eleanor Marge Deal Armstrong, born February 26, 1949, died April 4, 2017, had a history of suffering from multiple mental illnesses, including bipolar disorder, since her early teens, and seems to have been a serial killer. Before her mental health deteriorated in her 20s, Deal Armstrong was an exemplary student in high school and earned a master's degree from Gannon College. In 1984, she shot her boyfriend, Robert Thomas, 6 times as he lay on the couch, but was acquitted on claims of self-defense. Her husband and several other partners also died under suspicious circumstances. Deal Armstrong died from breast cancer in prison April 4, 2017, at the age of 68. Kenneth Barnes, unknown birthday. It just says he was born in 1954. The FBI couldn't even nail down this guy's birthday, or even birth month. Not even a month. 1954, died June 20th, 2019, was a retired television repairman, crack dealer, and Deal Armstrong's fishing buddy. He suffered from diabetes and died in prison June 20th, 2019, at the age of 64 or 65, since they don't know when he was born. William Ansel Bill Rothstein, January 17, 1944, was when he was born, July 30th, 2004, when he died. Dated Deal Armstrong in the late 60s and early 70s. He was implicated in a 1977 murder after he gave a handgun to a friend who used it to murder a romantic rival. He later attempted to destroy the weapon, but was granted immunity from prosecution in exchange for his testimony. Rothstein was a handyman and a part-time shop teacher and was part of a group called the Fractured Intellectuals, intelligent people who were not well adjusted. Rothstein was admitted to the Mill Creek Community Hospital on July 23, 2004, having previously been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, showing diffuse large cell type myeloproliferative lymphoma, and died on July 30th that year at the age of 60. Floyd Arthur J. Stockton Jr., born 1947, also no birth date, not even a birth month, is a convicted rapist of a disabled teenager. Stockton lived as a fugitive at Rothstein's house. He was granted immunity for his testimony against Deal Armstrong, but was never called to testify in court due to illness. Okay, this guy was a convicted rapist of a disabled teenager. Why are they granting him immunity? That's messed up. Conspirators' connection to Wells. Immediately after his death, investigators searched Wells's house and found a list of people he knew, including 2 prostitutes unknown to other members of his family. One of the prostitutes he frequented, Jessica Hoopsick, knew Kenneth Barnes, who dealt crack and whose house was used by sex workers. Wells as conspirator. According to law enforcement reports, Wells participated in the planning of the bank robbery the day before and was aware of the complex plot, although he believed the bomb would be fake and would serve as an alibi if he was caught. According to an FBI affidavit, 2 witnesses confirmed that Wells talked about the robbery about a month before it occurred. Wells was seen leaving Rothstein's house the day before the incident, and investigators believe he participated in a rehearsal. It was believed Wells was killed to reduce the number of witnesses. Family and friends of Wells dispute his involvement in the bank robbery and his own death, according to them. Wells was accosted at gunpoint and forced to wear the bomb. And that's curious, too. If for whatever reason the FBI wanted to make him guilty, I mean, some money changing hands or some threats, be quite easy to come up with witnesses that could testify to Wells' involvement. The crime, the collar bomb. The bomb used in the killings consisted of a hinged collar that worked like a large handcuff to go around the neck. 4 keyholes that went under the chin and a rectangular section that contained 2 pipe bombs and 2 kitchen timers. 1 electronic timer hung down over the chest. The device had several decoys, such as unconnected wires, a toy cell phone, and stickers bearing deceptive warnings. Pizza delivery. Wells worked as a pizza delivery driver at the Mamma Mia's Pizzeria in Erie for 10 years before his death. Just after 1:30 p.m. on August 28, 2003, the pizzeria received a call from a payphone at a nearby gas station. The owner could not understand the customer and passed the phone to Wells, who received a call to deliver 2 pizzas to 8631 Peach Street, an address a few miles from the pizzeria. The address was the location of the transmitting tower of WSEE-TV at the end of a dirt road. According to law enforcement, upon arriving at the television tower, Wells found the plot had changed and learned the bomb was real. Wells' family disputes his account of the events at the television tower. According to them, Wells was accosted at gunpoint by strangers and forced to participate. The details of events at the tower that led to the bomb being attached to Wells' neck have never been firmly established, but evidence suggests there was a struggle and that Barnes, Dale Armstrong, Rothstein, and Stockton were all present at the time. In interviews by law enforcement, Stockton claimed to be the one to put the bomb around Wells' neck. When Wells discovered that the bomb was real, Barnes said a pistol was fired in order to force Wells' compliance, and witnesses confirm hearing a gunshot. After the bomb was applied, Wells was given a sophisticated homemade shotgun, which had the appearance of an unusually shaped cane. Wells was instructed to claim that 3 black men had forced the bomb on him and were holding him as a hostage. Treasure hunt. Wells's corpse was found with 9 pages of lengthy handwritten instructions addressed to bomb hostage, telling him to rob the bank. The instructions also included a treasure hunt listing a series of strictly timed tasks of collecting keys that would delay detonation and eventually defuse the bomb. It also warned that Wells would be under constant surveillance and any attempt to contact authorities would result in the bomb's detonation. Act now, think later, or you will die, was scribbled at the bottom of the instructions. Robbery. Wells was instructed to quietly enter the PNC Bank at Summit Town Center on Peach Street and give the teller an affixed note demanding $250,000, and to use his shotgun to threaten anyone who did not cooperate or attempt to flee. Upon entering the bank at around 2:30 p.m., Wells slid the note to a teller. The note stated that the bomb would explode in 15 minutes and that the full amount must be handed over within that time. The teller was unable to access the vault that quickly and gave Wells a bag containing $8,702, with which he exited the bank. At 2:38, a witness called 911 from the bank and reported a male leaving the bank with a bomb or something wrapped around his neck. This is the first known emergency call for the incident. According to the witnesses at the bank and surveillance footage, after entering the bank, Wells waited in line. When he reached the counter, he began sucking a lollipop. He appeared confident as he left the bank, swinging his cane gun and the bag of money like Charlie Chaplin, according to one witness. Arrest and death. Around 15 minutes after Wells left the bank, he had completed the first task of the treasure hunt. He was proceeding with the second task when police saw him standing outside his automobile and promptly arrested him, handcuffed him, and left him sitting on the ground in the parking lot. Wells said 3 unnamed black people had placed a bomb around his neck, provided him with a shotgun, and told him they would kill him unless he committed the robbery and completed several other tasks. The responding police officers did not attempt to disarm the device, instead focusing on clearing the immediate area of pedestrians and ensuring Wells could not detonate the device. The bomb squad was first called at 3:04 p.m. At least 30 minutes after the first 911 call from the bank and about 10 minutes after Wells was arrested. So they're just chilling for like 10 minutes with this guy having a bomb around his neck. That's weird. At 3:18, 3 minutes before the bomb squad arrived, the bomb detonated and blasted a fist-sized hole in Wells's chest, killing him in seconds. Traffic congested in the area delayed the bomb squad's arrival, but personnel from the ATF still considered their response appropriately quick. Aftermath. WJET-TV, an Erie ABC affiliate, broadcast the event live on the air, but did not show the moment of the detonation live due to a technical problem. Was that a coincidence that they just happened to have technical problems at the moment of the explosion? The station provided the footage to FBI investigators, ABC's head office, and sister station in Buffalo, New York. The footage was subsequently linked to a shock jock on DC 101, a radio station in Washington, D.C., who posted it on his website in December 2003. Although he subsequently removed the video at WJET-TV's request, by then it had been posted to numerous video sharing websites. Though the note claimed Wells would gain extra time by each key found, police later traveled the note's route and could not complete it in the allotted time, implying Wells would not have enough time to get the bomb defused. The collar of the bomb was still intact, and Wells' body was decapitated so it could be retained. Death of Robert Panetti. The case also involved 2 further deaths linked to the conspirators. On August 31st, 2003, Wells' co-worker at the pizza store and its only other delivery driver, Robert Thomas Panetti, was found dead in his home after suffering a drug overdose. The murder of James Roden. On September 20th, 2003, Rothstein, who lived near the television tower, called police to inform them the body of a man, James Roden, was hidden in a freezer in a garage at his house. After he telephoned police, Rothstein wrote a suicide note indicating his planned death had nothing to do with Wells. Investigators do not believe Rothstein ever attempted suicide. Roden had been living with Diehl Armstrong for 10 years. In custody, Rothstein claimed Diehl Armstrong had murdered her then-boyfriend Roden with a 12-gauge shotgun during a dispute over money. Rothstein said she subsequently paid him $2,000 to hide the body and clean the crime scene at her house. In January 2005, Diehl Armstrong pleaded guilty but mentally ill to the murder of Roden and was sentenced to between 7 and 20 years in prison. She is believed to have killed Roden to prevent him from informing authorities about the robbery plot. Diehl Armstrong and Barnes charged. April 2005, Diehl Armstrong told a state trooper she had information about Wells's case, and after meeting with FBI agents, said she would tell them everything she knew if she was transferred from the Muncie Correctional Institution to a minimum security prison in Cambridge Springs. During a series of interviews, Diehl Armstrong admitted to providing the kitchen timers used for the bomb, stated Rothstein masterminded the plot, and that Wells had been directly involved in the plan. In late 2005, Barnes, who was still in jail on unrelated drug charges, was turned in by his brother-in-law after revealing the details of the crime to him. September 3rd, 2008, Barnes pleaded guilty to conspiring to rob a bank and to aiding and abetting. On December 3rd that year, he was sentenced to 45 years in prison by a federal judge in Erie for his role in the crime. July 2006, U.S. Attorney Mary Beth Buchanan announced Diehl Armstrong and Barnes had been charged with the crime, with Diehl Armstrong as the mastermind. The deceased Rothstein and Wells were named as unindicted co-conspirators. Buchanan stated Wells had been involved in the plot from the beginning, but that his co-conspirators fitted him with a real bomb that would have exploded even if it was removed. The D.L. Armstrong trial, July 29, 2008, U.S. District Court Judge Sean J. McLaughlin made an initial finding that D.L. Armstrong was mentally incompetent to stand trial due to a number of mental disorders, indicating this ruling would be reviewed after she had received a period of treatment in a mental hospital. D.L. Armstrong was then transferred for treatment to a federal mental health facility in Texas. On February 24, 2009, Judge McLaughlin scheduled a hearing for March 11, 2010 to determine whether D.L. Armstrong was now competent to stand trial. On September 9th, the judge determined she was now competent. In October 2010, D.L. Armstrong took the stand to testify on her own behalf as part of her defense. She asked for a change of venue, arguing extensive media coverage of the case prevented her from receiving a fair trial in Erie. Judge McLaughlin denied this request, noting while the allegations were unusual, the news coverage as a whole has been about as factual and objective as it could be under the circumstances. November 1st, 2010, D.L. Armstrong was convicted of armed bank robbery, conspiracy to commit armed bank robbery, and of using a destructive device in a crime. February 28, 2011, she was sentenced to life in prison to be served consecutively with the prison term imposed in 2005 for killing Rodin. In November 2012, the Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit affirmed her conviction. January 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court denied her petition for certiorari, declining to hear her case. In December 2015, D.L. Armstrong lost her second appeal of her conviction. The Hoopsick confession. In 2018, Jessica Hoopsick admitted to her involvement in the plot. Melissa Chan of Time wrote, "Hoopsick says a conspirator approached her to find a gopher who could be scared into robbing a bank." In the 2018 documentary Evil Genius, Hoopsick identifies the conspirator as Barnes and alleges she recommended Wells, whom she described as a pushover. Admitting to setting up Wells in exchange for money and drugs, Hoopsick expressed regret for her role and said Wells had no advanced knowledge of the robbery. ATF agent Jason Wick, wow, if that guy's name was John Wick, that'd be interesting, stated Hoopsick was uncooperative in 2003 and that authorities always believed that she knew more about the case. However, Wick also expressed concern Hoopsick might not be a credible witness. Okay, so now that we've become familiar with the Wells case, let's continue on for Under the Radar's connection to Todd Westmoreland. So this is Under the Radar's post here, August 28, 2003 in Erie, PA. At around 1 p.m., someone called Mamma Mia's Pizza, ordered a delivery of 2 pizzas to what turned out to be near a radio transmission tower, which shows that Brian Wells could not have been an intended target, because when you order a pizza, you never know who could show up. But Brian Wells was the one to show up. The next time he is seen was when he walked into the PNC Bank with a bomb strapped around his neck with a strange-looking device and notes instructing him on what to do, and some kind of homemade cane gun with one shot in it. The notes instructed him to go directly to the McDonald's across the street after getting the money. There would be more notes there for his further instructions. After that, he was to go next door to McDonald's and retrieve more instructions near the Eyeglass World nearby. After that, he was to follow more instructions until he received his final delivery spot. This is where the police caught him and the TV cameras rolled as he was blown up on TV. After all of this planning that this diabolical killer put into this game-like crime, it should be obvious to everyone that this plan logically would not work. If you send someone into a bank to rob it, logic will tell you that if you really wanted to retrieve that money, you would order the victim away from the area as fast as possible. To send him directly across the street to McDonald's of all places, directly under the Golden Arches to retrieve his next set of instructions should tell you he's spending too much time near the bank and will get caught soon, especially with his pizza car. So it's like the killer wanted Brian to get caught just so he could blow him up on TV. Again, he likes to see his handiwork on TV. As the FBI has stated, someone just wanted to kill someone. And I agree, and at the same time make a game of it. The following are copies of the notes that were left with Brian Wells that day. Notice the similarities that I have spoke about. It seems to be an extension of the JonBenet Ramsey notes. So here are the notes. Rules. 1. You must follow a course of instructions to find keys and combination codes to disarm bomb. Do not insert keys into keyholes until instructed. Some keyholes are booby-trapped to prevent tampering. 2. Drive 60 miles per hour throughout course. COARSE. 3. Use only 2 or 3 minutes at each stop. A sentry will be watching at each stop to ensure you are not being followed. 4. Bomb has tripwires. Forcing or tampering will detonate. 5. All weapons, papers, containers, tapes, etc. must be returned to us. Each item you find after dropping money has a key and/or combination word. You will need to decipher the combination. This will disarm some tripwires before you unlock. This procedure is to make sure you leave no materials behind. 1. McDonald's. Leave McDonald's from the rear and drive behind and around the side up Eyeglasses World. Stop at Peach Street. Important. You must get out and tie the orange tape, taped on the bomb case, around the fire hydrant at Peach Street to signal that you have the money and left the bank. 2. Go south on Peach Street, take Route 90 west for 2 miles. At Interchange 178, take 79 north for 2¼ miles. At Exit 180, pull to the side of the off-ramp and stop next to the yellow traffic light warning sign. Go directly across the grass to the right and into the woods. The container with the orange tape has your next instructions. Place all notes, containers, and tapes in the money bag and proceed. Police. If others alert police too soon, we will retaliate. Underlined. But you may still save bomb hostage. To do so, all police vehicles/aircraft must stand down and assemble all units at the specified location. Country Fair and Eyeglass World parking lots. No lights, vehicles face away from the road. Light 3 flares and place next to fire hydrant at Eyeglass World to indicate full cooperation. Stop no traffic in Erie County during this time. All nearby units must gather at this location. For every 15 units we count, we will spare 1 retaliation target. You can be sure it is in our best interest to act upon and maintain our future credibility regarding these matters. Important, no surveillance aircraft. We must be allowed to continue or bomb hostage will die. After completion, this event must not be reported to the public by any media or other means. If officials discuss this case with any public or members of the press, we will retaliate. We have prepared an ambush for police vehicles that attempt to follow the bomb hostage. You can only protect the bomb hostage and everyone else by staying clear. Our team is in radio contact. If any of us is stopped or apprehended, the bomb will detonate. If bomb hostage is delayed for more than 10 minutes, he will not have enough time to continue. Our team has spent combined 7.5 years in prison perfecting this plan. Do not think you can outsmart us in less than 1 hour. Save bomb hostage and people targeted for retaliation by standing down. Bomb hostage must be alone and use no radios or cell phones. Do not follow. All units must go to specific location and stand down to allow bomb hostage to continue, then return alive. Interrupting his progress in any way will use up his delivery time and get him killed. Bomb cannot be disarmed. It has more than 10 tripwires and any of 3 timers will detonate it. They cannot be stopped. The only way is to remove it from the hostage and allow it to detonate in the safe area we have arranged. Attempting to open or remove the bomb will detonate it. It can only be removed by disarming the tripwires, then removing it with a combination and special keys. We cannot provide these if we are stopped or tracked. We have planned for dozens of contingencies to ensure we are not followed or tracked. Stopping or tracking any one of us or hostage will cause the rest of us to 1 bomb and 2 retaliate. Bomb hostage will be instructed how to filter and electronically screen for tracking/security devices. If found, he cannot deliver and then bomb will explode. Cooperate fully and no one will get hurt. Our enforcement policy. Wow, this is a lot of notes. Bomb hostage was provided with weapons to enforce cooperation. The bank now has the life of the bomb hostage, its customers and employees' safety, its reputation, and legal liability in its hands. Success option. You must assist bomb hostage and follow instructions exactly. Avoid outside involvement until the bomb hostage returns to turn himself in. This will save the bomb hostage and prevent 2 retaliate. Greater complications will bring greater demands. To keep this simple, be smart. Failure option. If we have not returned to our apartment with the money demanded, the bomb hostage will die. Others involved will be dead or hurt. Your customers will be attacked and the press and customers will condemn you. Attacks will continue until $1 million demands are met. The most certain way to fail us is to contact police prematurely. If we ever see/hear/smell police or aircraft, we will 1. Bomb. You must wait 1 hour after the bomb hostage returns to alert authorities, or we will 2. Retaliate. The press must not broadcast this event. Our descriptions or rewards must not be posted anywhere. No one must copy our method. Investigation must not cross state lines. These rules will be enforced with 2. Retaliate, which may also include members of the press and more. Time is running out, so don't be foolish. Total compliance is the only option that can be safely achieved. Knowing that the money is insured should make your choices clear. The troubleshooters. P.S. If any of you expletive up this robbery, it will be our life's mission to expletive up your lives. We have followed your customers and employees home. We know where your families live. It is most important that you wait until bomb hostage returns before calling police and provide as much money as you can to meet our demand. If vault is not being opened by now, you are using up bomb hostage's safety margin and may die. We may detonate the bomb if he spends much more than 20 minutes in bank. And there's plenty more. Bank manager, important. Go to vault now. Ensure all people remain quiet and calm. Prevent anyone from alarming authorities or contacting outside. Close bank. All people remain inside until complete. Act fast or bomb hostage time will be exhausted. We may detonate the bomb at any time if police are seen. Resistance will be met with the following. 1. Bomb. We will detonate the bomb with a cell phone or its timer will detonate in minutes if we don't receive our demands or any of us is obstructed. The bomb has more than 10 booby traps and can only be disarmed and removed by finding and following our instructions and keys. 2. Retaliate. To ensure money is delivered and a safe return to our apartment in 1 hour, Sentry number 3 has tracked several customers and employees. Sentry number 3, how many sentries are there? Has tracked several customers and employees from your bank to their homes. He will sniper or bomb their residence if we do not receive the money. We will then continue assaults until much greater demands, millions, are met. During that time, bank's reputation and revenue will decline as we notify the press that people are getting hurt because you did not cooperate. Use no ink bombs, markings, tracking, locating device, or any other security measures. We will screen for these, and if found, will make us detonate bomb. Defiance guarantees death and revenge. We are using scanners and other detection methods to verify the money is clear. Channels are monitored for police calls. We will detonate if the authorities are involved. Myself, wife, and partner are following sentries to ensure compliance. After receiving money, we will provide... So there's sentries, and then they're also following the sentries to make sure the sentries do their job. Is this too complicated for anybody yet? After receiving the money, we'll provide bomb hostage with the location of the final key and combination to disarm and remove bomb. Wait 1 hour after bomb hostage returns to contact police, or we will 1. Bomb, or 2. Retaliate. If police, radio, APB, block roads, use aircraft, or in any way try to interfere with us, we will detonate by phone or allow timer to detonate. This event must not become public knowledge and featured on news, or we will 2. Retaliate. And then outlined in a rectangle. Now, gather employees with access codes to vault and work fast to fill the bag with $250,000. You have only 15 minutes. No matter what, bomb hostage must not leave the bank without money. Cooperate fully, and bomb hostage customers and employees will be safe. Do not slow the bomb hostage's progress or he will die. Cooperate fully and no one will get hurt. Proceed now to vault. Time is running out. Read other pages later. And now there's yet another page for the receptionist. Do not cause panic or many people will be killed. Sounding any alarm will interrupt this action and guarantee injuries and death. Involving authorities at this point will get this hostage and other people killed. Immediately, without causing alarm, you must contact the bank manager in private. The bomb hostage must accompany you. Give manager the following demands. Bombs expertly booby-trapped and cannot be disarmed in time unless keys are found by following instructions immediately. Bomb hostage needs less than 20 minutes in bank and 30 minutes to deliver the money. No money, no keys. If any one of us is stopped or apprehended, we will detonate the bomb or its time will run out. We will retaliate if interrupted. Summary. Bank manager. Now there's a summary. No alarm, panic, or police. Close doors. Everyone must remain in the bank or we explode the bomb and later assault your associates/customers. We are monitoring everything. You now have only 15 minutes to comply. Attempting to stop us will explode bomb. There is no possible way to disarm it. Comply with the demand, A or B. Bomb hostage will use the remaining time to follow instructions that he will receive as he proceeds to deliver money. Money will be inspected before we give him keys combination. If we are prevented from receiving or using money, or see/hear any police or aircraft, we will 1. Bomb and 2. Retaliate. If we are safe, you are safe. Bomb hostage will return safe after delivering. Do not contact authorities until 1 hour after bomb hostage returns, or we will 2. Retaliate. Demands. Bomb hostage must deliver one of the following amount to us depending on your available funds. Safe bills only. We will screen for die packs, transmitters, and any security devices before releasing bomb hostage. Use Plan A only if you do not have more funds available. A. $150,000, $150,000, 50s, 20s only, 50s preferred. Prevents only 1 bomb to save bomb hostage, but we will 2. Retaliate. So even if they do that, there'll still be retaliation, but it only, wow, is this convoluted for anybody? B, $250,000, 100,000 in hundreds accepted. Prevents both the 1 bomb and 2 retaliate. Guarantees everyone's safety. So why would they pick? So they're gonna have to pick Plan A and still receive retaliation. Detailed instructions follow on the next page. Important timing is crucial. Quietly get assistance and go to vault while continuing. Act now, think later, or you will die. Wow, there's even more here. Step 1, proceed now. 1, take the following demands to PNC Bank, get $250,000. Instruct bank managers to help or else everyone will be killed. Enforce demands with your weapon and bomb. 2, put $250,000 in black garbage bag. Leave your driver's license at the bank and promise to return. Then return the money to us by following a course of instructions. You will receive further instructions as you proceed. Do not leave the bank without the money or you will die. Carry out money in the trash bag and follow instructions. Stay close to bank manager or employees at all times during the robbery. Bring yellow stripped copies with you. You must bring weapon with you. Exit the bank with the money and go to the McDonald's restaurant. They even drew the diagram of the McDonald's with the arches, drive-through open 24 hours, and then a rock and some grass. Get out of the car, go to the small sign reading drive-through/open 24 hours. In the flower bed by the sign, there is a rock with a note taped to the bottom. It has your next instructions. How many movies do you think these people watch that put this together? If you can't find all instructions, alternate drop sequence, use only in emergency, may be deadly. Route 90, park eastbound next to Countryside Trailer Park. Take everything, walk to Grub Road Overpass. Warning, find notes before arrow, walk to Grub Road Overpass. Warning, we are following you and watching all stops. If you do not go to the bank, we will detonate. If anyone follows or interferes, we may leave and allow timers to detonate or call cell phone detonator. During the exchange, you may be required to identify one of our vehicles, a green coupe, and we will then remove front hubcaps. Cooperate quickly, and you will survive. What? We have gone to great lengths in planning and designing keys to unlock bomb to ensure that you may survive. There is only one way you can survive, and that is to cooperate completely. Still not done. Bomb hostage. Yet another page here. You are to go to PNC Bank at Summit Town Center on Peach Street. Quietly give the following demand notes to a receptionist or bank manager. Do not cause alarm. Get required money and deliver to a specified location by following the notes that you will collect as you race against time. Race against time. Really, how many movies do these people watch? Each note leads to the next note and key until finished. You will collect several keys and a combination to remove bomb. After, police won't charge you because you were a hostage. Most important rule, do not radio, phone, or contact anyone. Alerting authorities, your company, or anyone else will bring your death. If we spot police vehicles or aircraft, you will be killed. This powerful booby trap bomb can be removed only by following our instructions. Using time attempting to escape, it will fail and leave you short of time to follow instructions. Do not delay. You have less than 55 minutes until detonation. Spend no more than 20 minutes in the bank. You will need 25 minutes travel time. You have a safety margin less than 10 minutes. Use all remaining time to retrieve and obey our instructions. You will gain additional time by finding the first of several keys. As you follow our instructions, you'll be given all keys and combinations after the money is received and safely counted. We will leave keys and combination as you progress. If you delay, disobey, or alert anyone, you will die. It is your choice to live or bring death. If you do not obey and leave bank without money, you will die. So will others. Stay calm and do as instructed to survive. We're following your moves in 3 cars to make sure you obey. 3 sentries are driving and looking out for authorities. We are scanning... Why would they tell them how many? 3... We are scanning police radio frequencies and cell phone calls. If police or aircraft are involved, you will be destroyed. Alerting authorities or anyone else will prevent you from completing the mission. Go to the bank and quietly enter with the weapon you were given. Give the demands to the receptionist or manager. Avoid panicking the tellers or customers. Use the weapon if anyone does not cooperate or attempts to leave the bank. Weapon instructions are near the trigger. There's also instructions for the weapon. You must deliver money alone. You must return all weapons nodes to us. Turn yourself into bank and police after we release you safely. Act now, think later, or you will die. Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that does have in common with being probably the longest hostage-type notes ever, kind of like the Ramsey note was the longest ransom note. Alright, let's go back to Under the Radar here. Because of the recent John Carr DNA results, I have heard people say that this case will be harder for the Boulder DA to prosecute any further suspect they may arrest. If my theory is correct and the person who I believe really did commit this crime, then I believe that the FBI should assume prosecution of this suspect. This suspect would have crossed state lines in the commission of this crime, which could give it FBI jurisdiction. And that is one good thing about my suspect. Either way, as I stated earlier, whether Rod Westland is guilty or not, I believe he should still be a part of the public debate. We have all heard of all the other players in this crime scene talked about publicly as possible suspects. Fleet White, Helgoth, Jeff Merrick, Bill McReynolds, the Santa Claus, and now a person who has never even met the family, allegedly, John Carr. I say it's long overdue that we add another name to that suspect list, the guy who was intimate with the Ramseys and the Ramsey house before the crime, the guy that was the middleman in the money transaction the day of the crime, the guy who showed up on the crime scene from out of state just hours after the crime, questioning the police, the forgotten suspect, Rod Westland. Does Westmoreland have a connection with the intruder at their other house who stayed in JonBenet's room? Or did John Ramsey write this letter looking to frame Westmoreland, but didn't want to be obvious by not talking about it? That's actually another curious theory, because if it was the parents, how would they write the ransom letter, and why? Would they include statements like Fat Cat? So the last thing we'll look at here is this Smoking Gun article, thesmokinggun.com. Man sues over JonBenet murder claim. Ramsey family friend targets anonymous online accuser in court. So this was November 9th, 2006. A friend of JonBenet Ramsey's father has filed a lawsuit against an anonymous web surfer who has posted online messages claiming that the man killed the 6-year-old beauty queen as well as another person. In a lawsuit filed this week in U.S. District Court in Atlanta, Rod Westland, 54, alleges that someone using the handle Under the Radar has authored posts this year on 2 message boards that claim he murdered JonBenet in December 96 and killed a pizza delivery man in a bizarre August 2003 bombing incident. Westmoreland, a Merrill Lynch senior vice president who is only identified by his initials in the complaint, is a friend of John Ramsey, JonBenet's father. On the morning the girl was found missing from her home and a kidnap note was discovered in the family's Colorado home, John Ramsey called Westmoreland for help in gathering ransom money. In his complaint, a copy of which you'll find below, Westmoreland contends that he has been maligned by posts on message boards hosted by Topics.net and the web sleuth's crime sleuthing community. He intends to learn the real identity of Under the Radar via discovery in the case, which was filed by attorney Lynn Wood, who had previously represented the Ramseys, John Ramsey and his late wife Patsy, in several libel actions. Okay, so a lot to dissect there. So what can we deduce from all of this? Westmoreland, of course, it's interesting. Based on the case laid out here by Under the Radar, he makes an interesting case. Of course, now this is definitive. Of course, on Mindshock, the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. Obviously, there is no smoking gun evidence against Tom Westmoreland. So, again, I am not alleging he is or isn't guilty of anything, because there's just not enough information. You would have to know more information about his relationship with John Ramsey. I mean, what's his motive, really? There's just a lot of variables here that do not allow for a motive here unless you're going to the dark theories where he's part of some satanic Illuminati circle of the elite doing these child sacrifices. And even then, even if he is a member of that, that still doesn't mean he was responsible for the death of JonBenet Ramsey. So there's just so much unknown, it's impossible to say. But again, if the only thing you know for sure is that you know anything for sure, to dismiss theories and possible suspects, again, I'm not saying Westmoreland is or isn't a suspect. Under the Radar is claiming he's the best suspect. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with Under the Radar, but it's just curious. There's too many unanswered questions. There are too many unknown variables, as always. But to just outright dismiss without honest investigation, that's not logical either. So, hope you guys enjoyed another edition of Mindshock True Crime in the JonBenet Ramsey series. Plenty more to come, and there is yet another possible suspect who maybe even fits the bill even more. And this is also a suspect that does not get discussed often. And to those that believe that there are dozens and dozens of these suspects, no, there are not. There's just a couple that really have a bit of a deck stacked against them. But the thing is, it is a mutually exclusive deck, so to speak, because all of these people can't be guilty unless one wants to allege, I mean, they're all crammed in her house, or one wants to allege she was killed elsewhere and then placed in the house. Again, you'd have to have some substantial evidence of that, which, again, we don't really have a lot of evidence one way or the other in a lot of these issues. If you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. Like and share this podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. So consider becoming a patron today to support the channel as well, especially if you want anything specific covered soon. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.